Welcome to the A.L.I.V.E. Active Shooter Survival Training Program, where the experts break down active shooter incidents to discuss and assess each event to help you stay alive. This is your host, security expert and creator of the A.L.I.V.E. Active Shooter Survival Training Program, Michael Julian.
Welcome, everybody, to the next episode of the A.L.I.V.E. Active Shooter Survival Training Podcast. Today, I've got a couple of amazing guests. Both of them are A.L.I.V.E. certified instructors. I've got Mark Gillespie out of Texas. His company is Gillespie Forensics and Investigations. Hey, Mark, say hi and tell us a little bit about what your company does.
Hey, Michael and Joe. My company, like Michael said, I specialize in forensic consultations, cold cases, human trafficking, missing persons. I also have a passion for doing personal defense training, A.L.I.V.E. training, what we're here to talk about today. Just very passionate about helping people stay alive and stay vigilant and be situationally aware.
Thanks, Mark. Next guest, also a certified A.L.I.V.E. instructor, is Joe Saveditz. He's a managing partner of Risk Management Services. Hey, Joe, how are you today? You're out of Tampa, Florida, and tell us a little bit about what you do with your company.
Hey, good morning, Michael, Mark. Hope you guys had a great holiday and looking forward to a new healthy and happy new year tonight. My company is risk management based in the retail sector. Our specialty is that we consult with the independent business owner, the franchisee, the guy who has not much corporate support with regards to security and loss prevention, but yet has all the same problems as the big guys, the internal theft issues, robbery and violence issues, and so on and so forth. And I like to concentrate, just like Mark did, in the area of arming our people, the employees, with the knowledge of how they can get through their workday and go back home to their loved ones. And the A.L.I.V.E. program is exactly what is needed. The knowledge is needed out there in the business world. That's it.
Agreed. Right on. Thank you, Joe. Unfortunately, today we have got another active shooter event to report on. There is a silver lining. Instead of a couple of dozen people dying, some armed citizens took action and actually shot and killed the active shooter. Unfortunately, before that happened, two of the other people in the audience, parishioners, were killed, shot by the perpetrator. This happened outside of Fort Worth, Texas, at the West Freeway Church. And the gunman, though we don't normally in our training like to talk too much about the gunman, we don't want to give their name or too much video. We don't want to make them celebrities, but on the podcast we do for point of reference. The gunman's name was Keith Kinnunan. He was a 43-year-old male who had been to the church prior, apparently experienced some homelessness, some issues. His ex-wife has been interviewed, and I guess she said that he definitely had, she quote, crazy was the word she used. So this guy either had some mental issues or was just very hostile. But anyway, he decided to take that out on a bunch of other innocent people, and two of them lost their lives. And also two gentlemen who were parishioners. One was a deacon at the church, Tony Wallace, age 64, and Richard White, age 67. Now, this church was proactive enough to create a security team. And in Texas, a lot of people carry guns. They're a very gun-friendly state. And so the parishioners that put together this little team were all armed. And you can see in the video, which I'll show in a second here, when this happened, one of the guys closest to him, who was part of the church security team, his name was Jack Wilson, drew his firearm and shot and killed the guy. This guy's a reserve officer and firearms instructor, and you'll see in the video he's an excellent marksman because he shot the gunman in the head as soon as he pulled his weapon. As soon as the Jack Wilson pulled his weapon. And unfortunately, one of the other church security members had started to pull his weapon, but unfortunately was was shot before he was able to actually take action. So I'm going to just real quick, I'm going to share this video. This is the incident we're talking about. You'll see right up here, this guy's got the gun. He shoots. This guy starts to pull his gun, shoots him, and this is Jack Wilson. He immediately takes him out. Boom. Look at that, right to the head. That is an amazing shot. So you'll see it just now he grabs the firearm, pulls it out, is pointing this guy here is the other man that was part of the security team. He starts to pull his weapon. And I believe was saying something or yelling this guy to put the gun down, which at that point, obviously we know an active shooter is not going to be reasoned with. The pastor is up here. He's still, it looks like he's kind of unaware of what's going on, but these people here see what's happening. These folks here don't really know what's going on. And then he shoots with looks like a shotgun. I don't know if it's a short stock or not. Shoots this guy, he drops, shoots, or other way around. Yep, then shoots this guy, and then Jack Wilson opens fire. Boom. Now that is a pretty amazing shot. Most people would say, well, he was up close and they watched too much television, but the fact is to hit this guy in the head from probably 20 to 25 feet away, and the guy was moving to Jack Wilson's right. That's a pretty amazing shot. So we can only speculate how many more people would have been killed had this person not taken action. Now I'll show you also what happens then. You'll see other security guys start to mobilize and come up towards it, pointing their weapons. Everyone's ducking. There's a guy with a gun, another security guy there. So they were prepared. They apparently had been watching this guy since he walked in the door. He was suspicious, acting a little fidgety. You know, just because someone's acting differently doesn't mean that we can immediately assume that they're going to be a threat or ask the guy to, leave. That probably wouldn't be right. A church should be a safe haven for people that are troubled, but unfortunately, bad people are doing things like this. So it was handled really, 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 really well, at least by the one guy. I saw a post on Facebook earlier today, somebody that was, I would say he was kind of Monday morning quarterbacking the whole response, but he was pretty accurate. He was dead on with his assessment about the right and wrong way to do things. Unfortunately, in a situation like this, rarely is anyone going to act perfectly unless they have trained and they know exactly what they're doing, which is what we promote, obviously. But Jack Wilson, the guy that actually shot the killer, he did everything he was supposed to. He's absolutely a hero, and that's what he's being credited as being by everyone in the community. Mark, our very own instructor, was on the news yesterday. He's in Texas, and the news got a hold of him and said, "Hey, you're an expert and you teach an active shooter survival course. What do you think about it?" So, Mark, tell us about yesterday.
Well, it was pretty interesting, Michael. I got contacted, and of course, you're always kind of nervous about being contacted to be on the news, but I got contacted by 3 of the 4 major networks here, and have an interview set up, a couple interviews set up for the end of this week. But CBS wanted to come out to my office, sit down, and do a video shoot for the 10 o'clock news. And they, surprisingly, they were extremely interested in what A.L.I.V.E. was all about. And I sat down with them. And we just had a conversation about about the acronym, the individual elements of the acronym, and we had a very, very good discussion. And I mean, it would be nice if they could play the 50-minute interview, but they could only play a couple minutes of it. But I felt they compiled a very good story. I feel they did a good job conveying what A.L.I.V.E active shooter survival training program is about. And then they got my feedback on, what I felt about, mindset, precautionary reactionism, things like that, things that we teach. So
Yeah.
it was a good experience, and I hope people will jump on board and seek this type of training.
Yep. Well, I got the clip, so I'm going to show that real quick. This is your interview yesterday.
With each widely reported mass shooting, instructors say interest in active shooter survival training increases.
That's the case for one company in Cedar Park. CBS Austin Jordan Bonke joins us live in the studio now. He talked to an expert who teaches a mindset to survive active killers.
Yeah, and that mindset actually comes from the context of this acronym. It ranges from knowing where the exits are, where you are, all the way down to fighting back against someone who may be a killer. We spoke with those who've taken this course, and they said that it could save lives. Each time there's an active shooter scenario, like what happened at a church near Fort Worth this past weekend, people like security expert Mark Gillespie see an influx of interest in his course to survive an active killer.
I think had there not been a person with a handgun in White Settlement, that church, there would have been many, many more people killed.
The course teaches a mindset stemming from the context of this acronym, A.L.I.V.E. Assess the threat by knowing your surroundings. Leave or know a way to escape. Impede the threat by putting space or time by hiding between you and the attacker. V is for violence against the threat. Gillespie says that if you can inflict harm on the attacker, do it.
And if it means that you have to take that person's life, then by all means do it, because he's there to take your life.
And lastly, expose. Communicate to responding law enforcement that you're not the threat and you're just trying to survive. Gillespie says some who took this course used the very training to survive a shooting in 2017 when a gunman shot down from a Las Vegas hotel to a concert crowd below.
This training will help people develop a better mindset about the world that we live in, that there's a lot of evil out there.
Part of the class teaches most active shooter incidents end in 5 minutes or less. The course hopes to give those who take it confidence to know how to survive what could be the scariest moments of your life.
In this particular case, a will to live, a will to survive, a will to be secure, and to help everyone around you be safe and secure.
Now, this is the class that can range anywhere from an hour to 3 hours. For more information on it, you can click on this story on our website at cbsaustin.com. Live in the studio tonight, Jordan Bonke, CBS Austin News.
Thank you.
Well done, Mark. Nicely done, my friend. And yeah, that's you kind of highlighted what we teach, and they highlighted it very well. That was an excellent piece. I want to go back to and I'd like to get your guys' thoughts on this. So I'm going to show the video again, and since what we want to do is talk about on this podcast how A.L.I.V.E helps people and what we can do in the training. So I'm going to bring that screenshot back up, and I want to talk about, and you guys chime in, I want to talk about how these people could have used A.L.I.V.E in this situation. And we know that A.L.I.V.E, the 5 steps of A.L.I.V.E, it's a mindset, it's a kind of a philosophy, and it's a foundation for what you're supposed to do. But so many different scenarios exist that we can use it in. We can't say, okay, in the assess process for this is exactly what you do. We can, but there's just so many different active shooter scenarios that can happen. We kind of have to broad brush it. But since we have video of an actual incident, I want to kind of comment on it, break down a little bit about what the people in this audience could do if they use those 5 steps of A.L.I.V.E. So I'm just going to pull this up again. So let's say that somebody that hopefully everybody here had the A.L.I.V.E training. Thank God that these guys were armed and could take care of business. But what if they weren't? What if they were the ones that had to save themselves? Now, the shooter, who ended up being this gentleman up here, the A.L.I.V.E process would be acted out very differently depending on where you were in the audience. For instance, if you were one of these people right here, and suddenly this guy stood up and was pointing a gun in this direction, and you were aware of it because they probably didn't even know until the first shot rang out, what the best course of action would have been for them would have been to one, either run this way, but even better, if they could, since there was multiple, and we talk about swarm in the violence portion of A.L.I.V.E, if they could have just grabbed this guy and jumped on him. Unfortunately, these people probably did not know until they heard the first gunshot. These people here, you can see, are watching this interaction, so they know something's going on. And it's really going to come down to, what their mindset is. Are they a sheep or a sheepdog? And most people, as we know, are sheep. That's okay. Nothing wrong with that. If these gentlemen were obviously sheepdogs, this guy here and the guy that shot him, Jack Wilson. But what would they have done? They could have just dove on the ground and perhaps been shot and killed if this guy had not been taken out, because he would have then had these people right here to start shooting at. But what if you're this guy right here, or this lady? In the 5 steps, assess being the first one, these people are certainly, hopefully, in the assess process here, because they're going, what's going on? But are they considering the possibility of this man being disruptive, or is he just disruptive, or could he have a gun and could he act out in the way that he did? If you're one of these people, you're not going to be able to do anything. So they should have immediately, if they could see, now not everybody saw what was happening. If we show the video, once the first shot rang out, they probably knew it was in this area over here, but who knows if they could have even seen what was going on, depending on how tall they were. So these people here, the best course of action would have been to leave, and that would have been to get low and start traveling this direction, because you've got all these hardwood benches in the way if he did start shooting in this direction. The pastor probably could have gone this direction. They're in an open area like this. There's not much you can do in the way of impeding them. Perhaps run in through this doorway here. There's a room back here. There's probably another doorway over here where he could have run. And these people up here probably could have done the same thing, which might have been a very good idea. But these people here, and let's see how long it takes for them to actually see what's going on. First shot there. Everyone reacts. This guy immediately senses what's going on, and his wife hugs herself, which is very common. We've seen that in one of the videos we show in our training. She hugs herself and puts her head down. Now, this would have been probably somebody that would have frozen. Nope, she got down. Good for her. It's her husband that actually didn't do anything.
Like he's watching him.
He's watching him. Now, there's probably a pretty good reason why he's doing what he's doing. He's right now observing what's happening, and he can see what's happening, so he knows what's going on with the shooter. A lot of these people, including his wife, just immediately hit the deck, which good for her. That's certainly better than sitting straight up. This guy isn't doing any, well, actually, this guy's looks like he's taking care of his wife. These people are still upright. This guy's probably, he has eyes on the situation, so he can continue to assess it and then act as necessary. Now, this woman has seen the gunman go down, so she's starting to stand up, and then these people are all hitting the ground. This woman here looks like she's facing the other direction and doesn't know what to do, and these folks here are still watching what's going on. In a situation like that, and again, it's so easy to Monday morning quarterback, but until you're actually in that situation, what do you do? The things that are going through your mind are, what the hell is happening? Was that a gunshot? Yes, it was. What do I do? Where did it come from? So some people are going to panic, and some people are immediately going to be like, okay, I need to take action. And that's, again, the difference between, sheep and sheepdogs. You guys have any comments on this?
Yeah, I do actually a lot. To echo what you say, that church is the congregation is made up predominantly of elderly people, and so their mobility is very restricted to a large degree. I found it interesting to see the placement of the shooter, where he placed himself in the church. So I don't know why he picked that particular area. I don't know what he was thinking, but that was actually, he was kind of blocked in to a degree, because it looked like he was in sort of a corner.
Yeah.
So his mobility in some ways would have been restricted had he lived. But in that church, there's really only one way in, one way out. And when you're sitting in the pew, and when you go back to that video and you see the initial shot fired, those people, in mass, very uniform, in a very uniform fashion, they took cover, and they took cover under the pews. And I'm thinking, in a office or in a school, you see people just running for the exits. These people, they dove for cover underneath the pew, which was actually probably one of the best things that they could do, because there was a built-in logjam bottleneck just by the construction of the pews, the shape of the church, and the fact that these were elderly people. The best thing they did was to seek cover instead of running for the aisles. And I'm particularly referring to the ones that were closest to the shooter.
Yeah.
These people are not predisposed to this type of activity. They probably haven't been active, in many, many years. So their mobility is fairly restricted, and their awareness is probably not as good as what you would see with a younger person. So I would be surprised. I'm not surprised that people did not jump the shooter immediately. Now, if it had been people that had gone through this training, or maybe they were of a younger generation, they may not hesitate to jump that shooter en masse and take him down. So, Joe, what do you think?
Well, I think they're great observations, Mark. And I agree with you in that age category, the not being as mobile, not being as quick and nimble as a younger person would be. But I wonder, and I'm sure we'll find this out later on, since this church was astute enough to have security guys there and knew who they were, and as we can see, a lot of them produced weapons after the incident. I wonder if they maybe had some type of, during a session, maybe somebody talked about, if this happens, this is what you do. So, because you said it, that jumped right out at me too. They jumped right down on the floor and they put the barrier of the pews. Not all of them, but most of them did react that way. So I would think that they probably had some form of awareness about a situation happening like that. And let's face it, wasn't there another shooting in Texas within the past year or so that prompted the law to change, where they were allowed to bring weapons into the church?
Yeah, absolutely. That law changed 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Mark, explain that to me, because a church is, it's actually got more rights than regular private property. They're tax exempt and so forth. How is it that the government had any say on whether guns could be brought in? I would understand if this was a policy of the church, but how were the laws before and now in regards to having weapons in a church?
Well, good question. The law initially, before it was changed, a church is a gun-free zone. That was the law. You could not bring a handgun within, on a church property. And then because of, Texas being kind of a leader in gun rights and the Second Amendment, there was a lot of hue and cry about and movement towards relaxing the rules. And I think some of the incidents that we've seen have enabled the people of Texas to realize that guns should be allowed in church under some circumstances. So keep in mind that in Texas you have two scenarios of carrying a handgun. You have open carry and you have concealed carry. Open carry is governed by the statute, what's called 30.07. Concealed carry is governed by 30.06. The church can still decide, the leadership of the church can still decide and determine if they want to allow no carry, open carry, or concealed carry, or any kind of carry. So, and I don't know what this particular church has done, but I know that they've also allowed churches to have security teams, either volunteer or contracted security teams, armed within the churches. So I think this incident will serve as a model across the state for other churches to follow suit.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't like to get too political. Yeah. Who am I kidding? Of course I do. I don't care. It's unfortunate that I have not seen this coverage much on any other network than Fox, because this does not go with the agenda and narrative of liberal media. So they're not showing. Go ahead, Joe.
I was going to say, I saw CBS this morning, and they did a very nice, fair assessment and segment. And the reporter said the same thing you had done, Mark, that the law had changed, and this was what the law was created to do. Just this. They were not talking bad about having weapons in the church. They were talking about how this is how that law was meant to be portrayed, and it actually worked here. One of the commentators then said, well, this is a good situation, but it brings up the argument of guns again. So it was fair. It was fair from a different network, which I felt okay, maybe they're understanding.
Well, good. I'm glad that they're showing this. Now, could this have gone badly? Yes, absolutely it could have. This was much more badly than it already did. But let's say that this security team were not as well trained as this firearms instructor, Jack Wilson, was, and people had immediately jumped up in front of between him and the shooter, and they would have accidentally shot good people. Yeah, it could have happened. It absolutely could have happened. But this is a model.
Michael.
Go ahead, Mark.
Go ahead.
This is a model for the way it's supposed to be. So if you're going to have people acting as security in a church, in a school, in an office building, whatever, on airplanes, it doesn't matter. They've got to be proficient with their firearm, or they're just as dangerous as the bad guy. But this is, I think Mark said it, or Joe, this is going to be the model. This is going to change things. They saw the successful aversion of much greater, higher death toll because these people acted, because they were prepared, they were there, and they knew what to do, and they did it. They did it correctly. Go ahead, Mark.
Michael, this incident had, like I said in my interview, had there not been an armed security team, this incident could very easily have been one of the worst active shooter casualty scenarios that we've ever seen. Now, I don't know what he was armed with. I don't know what his
Other than a shotgun?
arsenal consisted of and
Yeah.
the reloads. But those people were basically sitting ducks, fish in a barrel, and it would have been catastrophic
Yep.
for our country.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So unfortunately, two people lost their lives, but this is going to be a great example. If nothing else, it's going to bring awareness to, for certainly, that the community of the house of worship community. They're going to go, oh boy, maybe we better do something, because it could happen anywhere, literally anywhere, and we teach that. Real quick, I want to go back to the video. I thought it's interesting. Watch how the pastor reacts. And again, I'm not judging anybody's behavior in a negative way. I think what we're doing is we're using this to show how people react, how they act in a situation like this. And some people react one way and some people react the other. And we want to use this as a learning experience. So I'm going to go back to the video real quick. Let's watch the pastor. And I think it's interesting when he realizes what's happening, he does react very quickly, but I'm wondering if part of the way he reacted, I think he panicked a little bit, understandably. I think most of us would, because he actually dives right here instead of the lowest point, which would have taken him a split second longer, and he would have had better cover and concealment from here. So now, this is a good example. He starts working his way down. Now, I want to use this as an example, and again, I'm not judging this man. I've not been in his shoes, so I'm not going to say he did something right or wrong, but I do want to highlight what a typical reaction is for people when they become overcome with the stress of this type of situation, and what the more beneficial reaction would be. You saw him when he dove down, he went nose to the floor. So he was literally, he could not see. And in the assess process, and then throughout the rest of the process, we teach, if you can keep your eyes on the shooter, then you're going to know how to, you'll be better educated and know how to react. If you don't know where they are, you're not going to know what to do. So let's say this guy had, if the bad guy with a gun up here, if he had been pointing this way right here at the pastor, and he was face down, he would not have known that, he could have easily been shot. If he saw that he was starting to turn the weapon towards him, he could have then rolled down or got up and took off running. We know for a fact, I mean, we know this and we teach this, a moving target is much harder to hit. So even if he was shooting at him, if he was running, he would have had a much harder time hitting him. Whoops. So anyway, what'd you think about that?
Well, I think, again, the awareness and how to react is obviously paramount, and having at least the foresight in your mind to gameplay it, plan it in your head of what would I do if, that certainly would have helped. The other thing I think that we need to be cognizant of is, and Mark, you had mentioned this earlier about having it be a catastrophic incident. The choice of weapon that the assailant used was apparently a shotgun. Had he come in with a semi-automatic or something else and just started to spray, it could have been equally as devastating. So I think luck was on a lot of people's side yesterday. God was in that house, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that was, every one of these incidences that happens, as unfortunate as they are, it helps us prepare and educates us for what should have been done differently, what was done right. And there's certainly some things that were done right in this situation. And I definitely believe we're going to start to see, a lot of things happening in the house of worship community to beef up their security and be better prepared. And there's a lot of good companies out there that do the training. You know, obviously we're partial to ours because we know it works. We know
Right.
survivors that used it, but I just, like I tell everybody, any training, well, let's say most training is better than no training. When I've said it before, in a scenario when some of these companies train people and then some guy comes in from the back of the room with a blank gun and scares the hell out of everybody, that's not good training. That's irresponsible training. But all other training is better than no training. So we certainly like people to come to us because we know our training works. But you know, any training is better than nothing. So, what do you guys have anything else to add on this incident?
I just want to add one thing, if I may. It's going to be interesting to see what their after action report or the lessons learned are from this incident, and I'm sure they will produce one. But when you look at that video and you see the position of the shooter, the location in the church, and you see the first victim was relatively close, and he looked like he was armed, and you see the hero. What's it? I forget his name. Ralph or
Jack Wilson.
He was close. He was close by also. So I'm curious if they, you know, they surely knew this guy was up there, but they didn't know what he was up to. So, I mean, last Sunday, I wonder where these guys were within the church. So my point is, did they position themselves based on the location of the deceased person?
From the shooter?
And basically we're kind of gearing up for a potential incident. I'm just curious about that, but I think they you know, they may have profiled the person as someone to bear considerable watch over. And although we lost 2 people, they were in the right place at the right time.
Yeah. To that point, Mark, I think I believe I read or heard, and it looks like from this that they were actually positioning themselves tactically. The guy that the church security guy with a gun that was actually shot, I think he was the first or second one shot. It looked like he was standing there kind of observing this guy. And I believe that they, from what I understand, they were aware, or they saw this guy and he was fidgety and thought, that's interesting. And so I believe that they were kind of keeping an eye on him and positioning himself. That reminds me of a situation I was in. We have a public entity client that they like me to do the protection work at their board meetings. And when I can, I do. I go there and I sit through the board meetings, and of course I'm armed, and I do my thing. I remember to that point, one time a guy came in and he went up to speak during the public comments portion section, and he was acting a little bit agitated, and he started to say some things that really didn't make a lot of sense based on what he should have been talking about. So I repositioned myself by going up and literally sitting down next to the podium where he was speaking, and at that point started looking, to see bulges in his, in his calf area, under his shirt or something like that. And I was ready to do, what I had to do based on the fact that he was acting in a way that I thought was probably something to take notice of. And we teach the situational awareness and proactive reactionism in A.L.I.V.E. And probably this is a very similar situation. These guys thought he's a person of interest based on his behavior. Just in case, let's get a little bit closer so we can react the way we need to. Unfortunately, the one security member was unable to draw his weapon fast enough. And it's very, very unfortunate. He was certainly in the process of drawing his weapon, but he just was not able to do it before he was shot and killed. So to your point, I believe they probably were kind of preparing for the what if or just in case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
All right, gentlemen, do you have anything else? All right. Well, I want to thank you for being a part of the podcast as usual. I want to thank you for being valued instructors of the A.L.I.V.E. program. For any viewers, any information on the program, activeshootersurvivaltraining.com. We've got our next instructor certification course coming up January 24th and 25th in like 3.5 weeks here in Southern California. If there's anybody out there watching this that's interested in becoming a certified instructor, go to the website, go to the training education page in the instructor course tab, and fill out that information. We'll be happy to send you some stuff. And if you're qualified to take the training and teach the class, we would love to have you. It is December 31st, and we've had quite a year. A.L.I.V.E has continued to explode, unfortunately, based on demand. And the unfortunate part is that there is a lot of demand for what we do. It's sad, it's unfortunate, and I believe one day with continued training by us and others and enhanced physical security apparatus to try and keep these bad guys out of where they need to be, and also hopefully there will be a little bit more psychological awareness to spot the warning signs when people are troubled and they're about to do something like this, so we can talk them off the ledge, so to speak. Or keep them from doing this sort of thing. So hopefully if we keep doing what we're doing, someday things will change. But unfortunately, it has only gotten worse, and 2020 will probably be the same. They'll probably continue, and we'll just continue doing what we do to try and prevent these sorts of situations. So, gentlemen, I want to thank you again for everything that you do, and wish you a wonderful new year. And I will look forward to seeing you guys again very soon.